And before I introduce our main event for today, one more time, I'm going to go over the partners that make all of this possible for all of you to attend complimentary. That's South State Bank, Care Construction and Roofing, Easy Management, UPE, which is United Professional Engineering. Of course, today we have Vote-HOA-Now, Last Ridge Insurance, Nuvo Elevators, Oracle Profitability and Consultants, City Quiet Windows and Doors, The Paving Lady, the Falcon Group, K. Bender Rembaum, Community Association Attorneys, and Hotwire Communications. Man, I need a sip of water after all that. So I can't imagine after teaching this course what y'all are going to need. So anytime you need a break, just let me know. And with that said, I want to now turn it over to Cathi over from Vote-HOA-Now, who will also introduce her colleagues. Cathi, thanks for joining us today. This was a great class. I've seen it before. Take it away, my friend.
Thank you so much, Jeff. What a nice introduction. Thank you. That was great. And thank you to all the partners that are making this happen. We're excited to share what we know about online voting today with you. I'm Cathi Sleight with Vote-HOA-Now. I'm just celebrating 9 years in the online voting industry. And wow, what a significant change we have seen over the years. Today with me, I have Ruth Ingoldsby. She's the next person in line. I think she's been with us about 8 years. So, we are always watching the online voting industry and making sure that we understand all the industry, knowledge, everything that's going on in the industry. So hopefully we can share that information with you today. All right. So anything else, Jeff, or shall we just get started?
Take it away. I can't wait for you to present this because there are so many with how easy it is to create a website these days. Like almost anybody can do it. People are like, oh, I can do this myself and I could have my association do this. Well, there's so much more to it than that. There are legal, all kinds of legalities. So I cannot wait for you to inform everybody about why it's vital to go with an organization like yours.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. Shall we get started then? Gonna share my screen. Or Ruth, are you going to share your screen or am I going to do it?
You can do it. That's what I was asking, who was doing it.
Okay. I think I'm in control. Okay, here we go and share. All right, so today, the truth about online voting. This is a DVPR approved course. I've already introduced us, so I won't go any further into that. Let me take us to the next screen. So today we're going to talk about the Florida state statutes because we think the bulk of you, of course, are in Florida. But if you have questions about other state statutes, we can answer those as well. Understanding and choosing a service level. Today, there are so many choices out there, and we want you to understand each one of them. Who should be involved, setting the parameters, the vote, getting started, successful transition. And this is really the transition from, our old paper methods, of course, to electronic voting, some of the benefits. And then, of course, we always love a little bit of myth busting here. So we're going to share some of our myth busting questions that we get and bust those myths at the end. So Ruth is going to get started here and she's going to take over some of the Florida e-voting codes and then we'll get into the fun stuff.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Yes, I get to do the Florida statutes section. So to get started, if you're not familiar, that Florida e-voting codes do exist for online or electronic voting. And of course, if you remember your hierarchy of documents, right, a state statute is going to supersede your governing documents. So if your governing documents do not allow for it, this is where you go to get that authority for electronic voting. So we talk most often about the condominium statute, 718.128. Within there's some administrative code rules as well that you need to be aware of regarding elections and electronic voting. Of course, the co-op statutes. I don't know how many cooperative managers we have on with us today, but there's a statute in the cooperatives as well. And then, of course, the HOA statute, which most often people refer to as that single family home planned community act. In general, when we are talking about electronic voting, we do not mean voting by email, not sending a copy of a proxy PDF or a ballot PDF and scanning it or taking a picture of it and having your owner send it in by email. Electronic voting is typically a separate system, in our case, managed by a third-party representative who sets up an online ballot. Your owners get a link to that ballot, and then they go on the system and vote. So it's a safe, secure method for voting, and that's what electronic voting refers to. So a little more specifics on the statutes. So we talk most often about the condo statute. The co-op and the HOA single family home statute is very similar. So we're just going to focus on the condo statute. But in general, that it states that the association may conduct elections and other votes through an internet-based online voting system if that owner consents in writing, love those words, to online voting and the following requirements are met. Now, we've already had a question about, can a member consent to electronic voting communications via email only? Great question, because that's something that's in the Florida legislature right now. So that answer is really right now going to be dependent on your attorney and their thought process of their ability to defend such actions. We believe that you can, because oftentimes people will respond electronically when they don't respond to paper because they're in that electronic world. But of course, you have to make sure certain things are met. And this, of course, says authenticate their identity, protect the secrecy. So that means secret votes must still be allowed because that's required, and protect the integrity of the ballot. You have to confirm delivery. Of course, that's going to mean something like a receipt to your owner, mail failures come back in, things like that. Kathy, if you want to go to the next slide, we got a little bit more info. So it continues to say, has to able to authenticate the owner's identity. And this means something along the lines of following the federal level for an electronic signature. Again, that doesn't mean that they have to physically sign something. They don't have to scan a driver's license. The federal level for an electronic signature is actually identical. Florida has adopted that same law for an electronic signature. And it's basically a process that you authenticate their identity by having them enter their name, their email, might have to enter a passcode, and that kind of information. You have to be ensuring that the vote is not altered in transit. And again, this is where a third-party system comes in handy, because again, if you emailed something, it could be altered. Somebody could, still modify that. And then it has to give that receipt to that owner so they get a record of how they voted. So much more than they ever got before via paper. They never knew if that absentee ballot even showed up at the office, if you got it, if you were able to pass it on, if you were able to record their votes. It might have gotten there after the vote closed, after the annual meeting. And then what did they do? So they know that they have that record showing how they voted, and they have it for their receipt. And then we get into the secrecy part of it. For elections, you have to be able to permanently separate the authentication or identifying information. This is what's so nice. On an email, you're not separating that information, so it's not considered secret. But in the case of a true e-voting system, you just have to make sure that that partner offers that electronic submission separate from their owner identifying information. And then, of course, you have to have documentation showing that what the votes were, that they can be recounted, inspected, or reviewed. So these are all in the statute. So these are some of the guidelines when you're talking to an e-voting provider to make sure their system follows all of these things.
Before we go on, just to make an additional comment, we are seeing more and more of our votes being reviewed and challenged. So, thinking about the recount and the inspection, gosh, don't get yourself in that position. Make sure that you have a professional to help you with those things once you receive those requests.
We do have some questions coming up as well. Cost per vote versus paper, that's going to be dependent on the provider you select. We can't discuss that kind of information. We didn't mention it. We're not talking here today about our system and what we do versus other offerings. If you want that kind of information, we have an email at the end that you can get that kind of information from us, but that's not what today's class is about. And somebody's asking, so does MFA account for that signature certification? I'm not sure what MFA is standing for in that case. So if you want to type that in, Cheryl, to clarify. In the meantime, we'll go on. So also in the statute, sorry to get, off track, but we like to answer your questions as we go. So please keep typing them in and we'll get them all answered. One of the big things that people are asking is, what about quorum for your meeting? And this is the beautiful thing. The Florida state statute included it right here, that e-votes count towards quorum for your meeting, our favorite part. So anyone, an owner voting electronically pursuant to the section, counted in attendance at the meeting for purposes of determining quorum. So you don't have to worry about, only 3 people showed up if you made quorum with your e-votes. So wonderful thing there for that. That's what that all says. We'll move on. And I think we're going to get into Cathy's segment here in just a moment. And one of the things that the statute does talk about, which we're going to get into a little more depth, is to create a resolution. So Cathi, if you want to go through some of this process now, we'll switch it over.
Yeah. Ruth, good job. And like Ruth said, be sure to ask your questions on chat. We'll stop and answer them as we go. So one of the things that we always recommend to our clients, of course, is that, to be successful, to put these resolutions or rules in place. And so we always encourage them to create a resolution. So, of course, we all know resolutions are a pain. And every time when I was a manager, I used to hear a resolution. It always scared me and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But it really is a good step. So to create a resolution, you must provide the unit owners notice of the opportunity to vote. This is a great way to let them know early that you're adding electronic voting as an option and the process that you're going to follow during that electronic voting. Resolutions are a great way. And then again, when you send out your notice, your call for candidates, reminding them that, gosh, we need a primary voting email to get in there and, read the resolution for the process. So you must be able to establish reasonable procedures and deadlines for unit owners to consent. Now, in Florida, they do say that the owner must have the ability to opt in and opt out in the state statute. For us, we take care of that right away. Some of you may have already started by paper with a typical opt-in form. There's not a lot of people returning their forms in. You don't get a lot of feedback from that. So of course we take care of that electronically. We've proven that it does work. And sorry, I'm stumbling a little bit here. I'm just going to move on. Make sure that you share your resolution and your information with your owners. Now, written notice of at which the resolution will be considered must be mailed or delivered electronically to your membership. So just make sure that they get that information at least 14 days before the meeting.
Okay, so we have some more questions we're going to pop back to a little bit. First, on that second bullet there, a reasonable deadline. We love that. We love generic kind of open-ended, it's up for your attorney to decide what's reasonable. Some attorneys are 10 days. Some will say 3 months. So again, it's all going to fall into what your own particular governing documents may spell out as far as 14 days to 60 days, things like that for your notice. So your resolution, same kind of thing. Your attorney will have a better understanding of what they consider reasonable. We've seen it all over the board. So, but yes, your resolution, we love those kind of just open-ended reasonable. Reasonable could be a year to some people. We don't know. As we stated, we might not have stated at the beginning, we're not attorneys. We don't like to play them on TV. So we always kind of have to push that back to you. We're going back to that previous question about the MFA. That was multi-factor authentication. I'm sorry, it's 8 a.m. here in Arizona where I'm at, so my brain wasn't quite picking that up. So yes, if you have multi-factor authentication on your e-voting system, that will certainly apply and follow the rules for the electronic signature. Now, electronic signature verification is not quite that high level because it's not a credit card, that kind of thing, where you have to get that security code to your phone after you register. So you might not need to go to that level. Great question though. We have some other questions, Cathi.
You get some kind of confirmation when you create your account and register as well, so that you know that you've registered at the right place.
Yes. So Cathi,
now, with all of that said, of course,
we have a few other questions. We have a couple questions coming in that I want to ask you. I'm going to combine them. And they are
Okay.
about, do you have to use electronic voting every year if you've started the process? We have a couple people asking if they wanted to change back after creating their resolution and then wanted to switch back to a previous format. Does it have to continue?
Yeah, that is a great question. And, right now in Florida, there is a statute that they're beginning to pass that says once you offer the opportunity to vote electronically, you have to continue to make option available to your owners. But going back a little bit to that opt-in, opt-out, owners can opt in and opt out during any vote. Maybe they want to opt in during the election, but during the amendment, they want to submit a paper ballot. So it really is up to them. Electronically, they can just say, unsubscribe. I don't want to receive the electronic voting emails any longer. I'm going to contact my manager and get a paper ballot. So they do have the ability to opt in or opt out at any time. But we may soon see something in the state statute that says once you've offered the online voting, you can't take it away from them. So we'll see how that goes.
So keep in mind, right now, the statute is open. You can go back. And we always recommend you're not moving to all electronic voting. You're offering this as an option. So your notice may say something like, this year we've added the electronic voting as an option for helping make quorum and ease of use and save the community time and money. And so your 3 options for voting are: 1, vote electronically, preferred, saves time and money; 2, come to the meeting, vote in person; 3, ask the office for a paper proxy. So it's just an option that you're adding. You're not requiring everybody to go that method. All right, let's get off the statutes.
Okay, let's go move forward. Well, with all of that said, our next slide is our favorite things, of course. No more proxies. This means no more door-to-door collection of proxies, no more trying to find the proxy holder to make sure they're going to submit a ballot, no more counting proxies towards quorum. I mean, it virtually just really takes the proxy situation away. Unless an owner is just really, intent on receiving a proxy, they will call the office and ask for one. And those are still acceptable as far as a way to submit your vote. But if we are doing proxies, we always, in Florida, we wouldn't because it's not required. But some documents still say that you must use proxy. And in that case, it is a directed proxy that we would use. So the owners giving their vote to the board or a person, but they're also making their selections on the candidates, approving the minutes or whatever else they have on. So isn't that, I'm sure a lot of you are saying that there's no more proxies or running around door to door. You don't know how many managers we talk to that say it's so nice to meet quorum before the meeting.
For those who, Kathy's sound kind of went in and out a little bit there. She was saying no more proxies needed for an e-vote. If you do paper proxies, those are of course still allowed, but on an e-vote, you do not need to have a proxy. Sorry, your sound cut out for a second there.
All right, thank you. Well, that's why both of us are here, so we can help each other, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so just a little bit about creating your e-voting resolution. So you have some guidance. Be as concise as you can, follow both your governing documents, your state statutes, and of course, consulting with your attorney about what they would recommend be in your resolution. Some additional items to consider, of course, is make sure that you're only sending paper proxies to those who don't opt in or don't have an email address in your system. So when they get the notice, they're going to make their choice. They're going to see those options, but yet they still might have a paper ballot in their packet if they choose to send that in. So that's the best way. Over time, you can do away with it, adding all that information to your annual meeting packet and just make it all available upon request. So some other things to consider, of course, is what to do if an owner votes via paper, proxy, and online voting. Which vote prevails? Be sure to make this clear in your resolution. We have a statement that we put on our ballots that say all votes are irrevocable. So once you submit your electronic ballot, it is the final vote. And those are the kind of things that you can put in your resolution. And you can also add it to your meeting notice and onto the email invitation to vote once your vote starts, so that everyone knows that once they click that submit button, they don't have to do anything else.
Before you go on,
And
Kathy, we
then,
have
of
another
course, we
question.
always like to say,
Wait, before you go on, we have another question
Okay.
relating to that point for you, about how do you consolidate the tally with both paper and electronic? Can you give a little insight
That's
on
a
that?
great question. Yes. So we always recommend that you end your electronic voting and your paper voting all at the same time. Might be 5 p.m. the day before the meeting, might be noon the day of. So then you've got all your electronic voting. That vote is over. You know the results of that. Any paper votes in Florida are going to be secret. So you're going to follow your regular process to accept those paper ballots. And in most cases, you're going to have a list of all of the lots or units who have not voted. So when you're reconciling those paper ballots at the meeting in front of your membership or through whatever process you're using, you're going to look to that who has not voted list and say, okay, they did not vote electronically. So we're going to go ahead and open this envelope and set that ballot aside to be counted randomly with the other ballots.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope that answered your question. So you're still going to follow a little bit of a paper process. Okay, so here we go on to the fun stuff. Understanding and choosing a service level. So there are three choices out there. We've got the full service SEP management provider, and then we have the self-service portal or management company add-on software. And honestly, you know, some of the management company softwares are giving us a run for their money, but a lot of things to consider when you're thinking about your service level. So a free full service provider, of course, is going to free your manager up to work on other projects. We all know that the election comes every single year. It's a lot of work, counting all the paper ballots, collecting them, answering questions, all of that stuff. Have a third party separation. Just take care of all of that. All your manager is doing is reporting on quorum to the board, and then they're taking the final results to the meeting. So it really does let the professionals do what they do best. And that third party separation, of course, you know, we can't say that enough because it really puts the responsibility on the third party provider, the processes, the information, everything that they followed, any votes that were deleted, any requests, all of those things, you know, they're going to track for you. It's very difficult for a manager to follow the same process through every single vote. And let's be honest, you know, sometimes we end up in court or we end up with these votes being challenged. And you certainly want to be able to go to your third party provider and ask them to help you with those things. And we see that more and more happening. So consider that. Now, a little more risky, of course, you know, with the self-service portals or management software, of course, it is more work for the manager and the administrative assistant. And like we said earlier, you know, a lot of those things, it's a learning curve. You're not sure, you don't have time to review the state statutes like we do. You don't have time to make sure that you're choosing every single option that should be on the ballot. It becomes very difficult. And we all know there are a lot of new managers out there in the industry and they barely had a year of experience. And so some of these things can, you know, they can't understand or they can't grasp right away. And then we have, you know, our managers who are excellent at it. And maybe they can follow all the steps and do a really good job. But we all know that our communities are transitioning from manager to manager, from management company to management company. And it's nice to have something that just moves along right with them. Now, you know, oftentimes in the self-service and the management company software, the manager, the board member, and committee members are all involved in the process. And there can be some risk there as well if someone can see the tallies or they know who's winning or they're, you know, they can't keep that poker face, as if we call it, when someone's asking them, you know, should I go out and knock on doors?
It's the wink and the
Those
nudge,
type of
Kathy.
things.
It's the wink and the nudge, right? Like,
Yeah,
just
the
give me a
wink and
little
the
wink,
nudge,
give me a little,
yes.
am I winning? Yeah.
How am I doing? Right. Am I
Yeah.
going to be on the board again this year?
So we have some
So,
questions.
we don't want our managers or our board members or our committee members in that situation to have to answer those questions. We want them to say, we're not sure. We don't know who's winning. We'll find out the night of the meeting. All we know is that we met quorum and we're able to have our meeting. And maybe it's the first time we've met quorum in 10 years, really. If you go on our website and read all of our testimonials, that is one of the most common comments, is that, we were able to meet quorum this year. So really important. I'm a big meet quorum person, because then you have a duly elected board to represent your community.
Great.
So of course there is more risk for the association and management company than the full service provider.
So we have some questions coming in about this slide and some things that Kathy's been talking about. We'll dive into those right now. Some of the questions are about handling the paper votes into the count, and if full service providers do that. And also if it does it, how does it work? All of that kind of thing. So I'm going to answer that so that I can answer these couple others real quick in the same time. So there are some full service companies that will handle combining paper votes into your electronic vote. Of course, cost is going to go up because they're probably managing the paper process for you. So there are some full service providers that will do all your mailings and things like that. Of course, there's going to be higher costs involved for that. So oftentimes we see that the association still likes to handle those paper mailings, so they don't have that increased cost. But there are some companies that do that. So that handled like 1-2 questions. Average cost of a third-party company, as I mentioned earlier, we can't discuss costs. It's going to vary vendor to vendor. We will show you a link to get an estimate from us at the end. And of course, there's other vendors out there that handle this as well. As far as an association that only has 12 owners, yes, you may want to try a self-service portal yourself. Again, keep in mind, more work for the manager. You're opening yourselves up to potential legal liability. What happens if you're the manager or you're the board and you move out of that association and 5 years down the road, somebody's questioning the amendment vote that you ran? Now you're getting pulled back into court to defend your process. So you got to kind of weigh out, as Cathi said, that risk. Is it worth it? Yeah. And I think the other question—
That's a good point too. Just touching on the amendment a little bit. In 12 homes, if they are voting on a membership vote that requires a higher quorum, that has to be legally recorded. Gosh, wouldn't you want a third-party provider to run that vote for you and make sure that, they're carrying that amendment and an official report of all of the lots or units that voted yes for it, proving, that there was an actual, vote for that amendment.
Right. And so keep in mind too, if you do a third party and your association through your management company sends the paper, your management company typically is the one who receives that final report, as Cathi mentioned, and they're going to integrate, or not necessarily integrate, but they're going to go through that who voted or that who didn't vote list to verify on that outer envelope that property didn't already vote online. And if they voted online, they're going to write on that outer envelope already voted online, and then they're going to set it aside. If they didn't, they're going to open that envelope and then carry those inner envelopes to the meeting or whatever the process is for counting those ballots, whether it's at the meeting in the back of the room or in person on camera, if it's a Zoom meeting, that kind of thing. We have another question of somebody asking about, is there companies that verify physical signatures to avoid e-voting altogether? There may be, but since we're talking about e-voting, that's our domain. We don't really know about other companies. It's probably more expensive to have somebody show up live at your meeting to count and try to physically verify signatures. So I don't know how you would do that compared to a driver's license.
How are you verifying signatures? But, if through electronic voting, typically there is a registration process that will constitute that electronic signature. So it takes care of it without the verification is really the registration code and the other information that we gather about that lot or unit.
And we will get into in a few slides down the road here, all the benefits you're going to receive from e-voting. And that's really what this is about, is that the benefits of e-voting is going to truly outweigh having, continuing with the paper process. We do have a question, Cathi, about how does somebody handle information sheet submissions from the candidacy? So our candidacy disclosure forms or resumes, things like that. How does the company handle those?
Yeah. Well, you know, of course, we call it the call for candidates period, and all that information is coming into the office. The manager, or, you know, maybe committee members or board, are verifying that they're an owner of record, they have the ability to vote, that they meet all the requirements of that election. All of that information goes into a voter's pamphlet electronically online that the owners have access to, or you may have to post it on your website, or if you're still mailing those paper packets, you may have to include that information in the paper packet. So over time, eventually everyone will get used to going, you know, to opening up their packet on the electronic voting site. Or if you do have a website, then you can place the packet there and they can read about the candidates. And the candidates are on the ballot as well. Gosh, we're seeing photos, 1 to 5 minute videos, resumes, you know, all kinds of wonderful ways to communicate with the owners in the community. Sometimes, you know, the pictures help people remember who that person was. Maybe they're at the meeting and they had a great idea, and they really have, you know, developed a lot of respect for those people that they're electing to the board. So we're getting more information to our owners than we ever have before. But if you have those paper submissions, they just go into the voter's pamphlet or your meeting packet.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on this slide. Let's touch on one more thing real quick. That bottom
We
red
did, but it
part.
was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It says, keep in mind, free or almost free means you are the product. Now, this relates to, as you know, like, for example, you're on Facebook or one of those kind of platforms. And the reason those things are free is because the software is tracking you and selling your information. So same thing goes for a free or almost free voting site or survey site. I think you might know the one I'm talking about, called Monkey. Your owner data is the product. That's why it's free to you. So they're going to take all your owner emails and sell them off in their system. So just be very careful of that kind of thing if you're trying to do it on your own. I heard a great quote from one of our clients the other day who did something just like that. And they said, more for less now meant more mess for us later. And they just had to redo everything they did, and they had to pay for it. And actually it went to court and all that. And that's how they got to us. So keep that in mind. Free comes with the cost. We have a couple more quick questions, but Cathi, if you want to get ready for the next slide, does this eliminate vote harvesting?
Forward,
Yes, absolutely. If there are 5 positions on the board, do I have to vote for 5? Most systems allow you to vote for fewer. Benefits of using e-voting separate from a package of online Zoom. Again, it's all going to be cost, that kind of thing. And yes, this will help eliminate the DBPR ombudsman assistance on election day, but you might still need it for those secret votes to tally those paper. So on that note, Cathi, let's talk a little bit more about your vendors for e-voting, especially that third-party service provider.
Yeah. So we love to say all vendors are not the same, you know, all attorneys are not the same, all landscapers are not the same. So, you know, we are in this industry, we're always looking for a partner that understands and specializes in the community association industry. Maybe they have some experience working in a management office. Maybe they've been a manager. And it just, you know, really, even for us, we're looking for people who understand what an HOA is and what quorum means. So, you know, work with an e-voting partner that does understand the industry. They know how to look at the state statutes. They know how to read your documents. Becomes very important when we're talking about these large membership votes and document amendments and even elections. You know, they're being more scrutinized now than they ever were. Has experience, of course, experienced leaders. Is based in the US. This is really important because, you know, we know what the state statutes are. We're understanding, you know, everything all across the US, which is great. So make sure that you're asking these things. Provides a third-party separation. You know, even some of those sites that have you set up your own ballot do have a full service option. So be sure that you're looking into everything. And then, of course, you know, we truly believe that education in this industry is the way that we're all learning and growing. So make sure that they are, that they understand the education, that they have designations, that they're attending those educational courses, and they understand what's going on in the association industry.
Thank you, Kathy. Excellent. So
Okay.
we do have some other
So,
questions that we're gonna, sorry, we do have some other questions that we're gonna get to coming up. So I just want to let people know that as they're typing them in, that we will get there. Go ahead.
all right, so setting the parameters, it seems like it is good to start planning early. Now, it is great for the vendor, of course, to have a single point of contact. We all know that it happens with every vendor that we're using. We don't want the owners talking to the vendor, the committee talking to the vendor, the, board, all of those people. Typically we are working with a manager or board or committee member. But most often we're working with the community manager. They are a single point of contact. They have the ability to confirm, ownership. They have the ability to pull that owner data for us. They have the ability to complete and fill out the electronic voting submission form and anything else that we request. We always find that they are the hands-on people and typically the single point of contact that we work with. So we always say, just make sure that it's a neutral party with no ownership in the association. Of course, they're available to answer questions. They have the ability to provide all the ballot and vote information, the owner list. Also, the most important thing, looking at the ballot, reading the invitations to vote, reading all of the information, making sure everything's spelled correctly, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, and then they provide approval. So they really do play an important role in everything getting set up. And then, of course, most importantly, they're going to be answering a few questions off and on throughout the vote, but they are typically the ones who do receive that final report and take it to the meeting with them. And then, of course, they're going to coordinate any secret ballot counting or paper vote counting. So, they do play a really important role, and it is nice to have one person doing all that. Now, oftentimes we might see that the board wants us to copy the accountant, or maybe they want us to copy the attorney, so that two people are getting that final report at the same time. So that does happen, and it is good to have that double, verification system. So all of those things, of course, can happen with electronic voting. So continuing, of course, with setting the parameters, usage. We talk about this all the time. Maybe this year you're going to have your election. You're going to have an amendment or some kind of membership vote. And honestly, we do all kinds of votes, document amendments, lobby designs, paint schematics, everything that a membership, of course, would vote on can go onto an electronic ballot. Your meeting minutes, your IRS ruling, 7604, get all of that on there. But it's nice to bundle them together. Maybe you have an amendment this year you'd like to pass, and then you've got your election going. Add on that secondary ballot and start your amendment vote and capture that owner's all of their time at once. So they'll complete their election ballot and then they'll be taken on to the amendment ballot. Oftentimes you can save a lot of money by adding an additional ballot that your owners can vote on. So be thinking about your whole year and what your plan is. Talk to your vendor about it. Make sure that you're, understanding all the options and what the best approach is to get all of those votes passed, or at least reach quorum on all of those votes. Of course, we can't always say they're going to pass.
So we do have a question that relates
now,
to this
the types of vote.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yep, we have a question. So should electronic voting close at the beginning of the annual meeting, or when the individual presiding the meeting officially closes the collection of the paper ballots? Great question. So you want to answer that for us, Kathy?
You did it again for me. I don't know why I wasn't quite.
Oh, you didn't hear it.
tracking.
So should electronic voting close at the beginning of the annual meeting, or when the individual presiding over the meeting officially closes the collection of the paper ballots?
Well, no, we recommend that the electronic voting and the by mail in paper ballots all in at the same time, which, typically is 5 p.m. the day before the meeting or noon the day of. Then you're going to the meeting with the bulk of your results, electronic voting, you've got those. And then you're just handling any paper things at the meeting. So those are called, I'm coming to the meeting to vote. And then, of course, you already have your electronic voting. It's hard to keep your electronic voting going through the meeting or up to the meeting because every owner must have the ability to get service on their phone at the facility, to open up their email invitation to vote, to make their selections on the ballot. I think you're going to find you're providing a lot more support for those types of things at the meeting if you allow the electronic voting to go through it. So end it before you get to your meeting and just deal with any paper ballots or your owners that are coming to the meeting at the meeting itself. I hope that answers that question for you.
Thank you, Cathi. I think so. So we have a few other questions I'm going to run through and answer real quick before we continue on here. Why US based problems? Yes. Oftentimes, if you're not working with a company, say you're working with a company in, I don't know, Dubai or something, are they familiar with the US laws? Are they familiar with the laws of electronic signature? Do they understand the different state statutes apply? Things like that. We have come across that before where we've taken over for another voting company that didn't understand that, and the association kind of got into some hot water for that. So that's why we always recommend US based. Of course, you know, there probably are some others, but we like to stay in our own neighborhoods, if you will, being in the US. And then somebody's asking about federal or state laws requiring member votes to be secret. Yes. Florida statute, and we're gonna, I think we have another screen coming up about that, but yes, your statute in the administrative code that I called out earlier has a secrecy requirement. So if you haven't been using secrecy for your e-votes for a condo, it's required. We won't tell anybody, but moving forward now, you know, for your condos. So that's that one. Somebody asking, does it allow for one ballot for multiple unit owners? They have separate ballot submissions. So no, keep in mind, your vote is based on the property, not the number of owners in that property, unless you have some really strange bylaws, which we have seen that, where every owner gets a vote, or there's 2 votes per lot, and then each husband, wife type get a vote. So typically it's only going to one owner, and then they have to discuss amongst themselves. We're not, you know, we're not marriage counselors. They need to talk and decide how they're voting together as their property, just like they would have in paper. They would get one paper ballot. Go ahead, Cathi.
Yeah, and that's true with an LLC or maybe a certificate or something that you have that identifies that primary voting individual and that primary voting email address. And then we have the registration. Maybe we sent the email to Cathi Sleight, and then I wanted Ruth Ingoldsby to fill out my ballot. So I might send her my information and ask her to register. And then it becomes, you know, really convoluted. So it's nice to have one primary voting individual.
Great. Let's go
All
on.
right. So the types of votes, we all know what they are, you know, elections, amendments, other membership votes, budget meetings. You know, we do a lot of budget votes and different types of things, loan approvals. All of these things, of course, require that you have a duly elected board so they can represent you when they are applying for a loan and providing that information to their financial institution. Same with your insurance. You know, maybe you have an insurance claim or a lawsuit. They're going to ask you if you have a duly elected board. So reaching quorum becomes very important. We do a lot of those types of votes.
Okay, last question before we move on, real quick. Grouping the items together. We're talking about running an amendment vote, maybe at the same time, starting it as your annual meeting election. So keep that in mind. You might be able to group them together, or at least start them at the same time to make a voting event. That's what we're talking about there. So I'm going to go breeze through this slide really quick. A lot of this is those codes we were just talking about. So when you're preparing your vote and getting started, you need to have these parameters set in place. So of course your voting start and end. And these are things you're always doing when you have paper anyway. But look at that condo admin code as well, to make sure that everything's your correct dates. Call for candidates due, what is the quorum, the election, and then here's where we're talking about what's in those statutes. Condo code for Florida, write-ins, minimum 14 days. Candidates must be listed in alphabetical order by last name. You cannot say the word incumbent. That doesn't mean that the person filling out their candidacy form can't say that they weren't the past president. They can, but the association should not list their name, John Smith, comma, incumbent, something like that. No write-ins, secret ballot. There it is. It's in the code 61B-23.0021. So make sure you track all that if you're a condo. That's where the secret ballot is written. If you're a single family home, you don't have to worry about that. The admin code is only for the condos. And then of course, the last bullet here, I'm sorry, I'm speeding up because I realize the time. The who can vote. This is the owner data record. A lot of people miss this. This is in the corporation code. So you got it. I know there's a lot of codes, right? So you have corporation, nonprofit corporation, then your condo or your single family home code, your HOA code. But again, this is the owner data record, and that's going to show who has the ability, the right to vote. And so you're setting a record date. Oftentimes that's the date of the notice or the day before the notice. So check your governing documents yourself to see if your document says that date of notice. Otherwise, go back to that corporate code for that. So that's what that screen is about. I don't mean to be rushing it, but you're going to be able to get a copy of this presentation later so you can look at all these code numbers and that kind of stuff. I'm sure everybody's also taking their phone and screenshotting this right now. So, but we've got a lot more slides, so I wanted to get through it quick and move on.
I'm really interested. Yes, I
Yeah.
would be. I'd be taking screenshots.
Yeah.
All right, so we're moving on. So we're up to the end, and I think we have a little bit over an hour to go. I think we have Jeff will pop in and tell us how much we have left, I think.
You're doing just fine. No worries.
All right, thank you. Benefits of a successful vote. We all want to know what these are, and some of them are very obvious. But of course, it's easy for owners to vote electronically. You know, it's a little more difficult, of course, with paper ballots. So it is easy for owners to vote, and they receive multiple reminders over the time that the vote is open. So if they miss the first one, or they delete it, or they want to wait, they're always going to receive another email and be reminded that they have a certain amount of time to submit their vote in this election or in a membership vote. They receive a receipt of exactly how they voted. Ruth mentioned this earlier, but this is more than we've ever given them. I know that a lot of my owners dropped their paper ballot in the mail 2 days before the meeting. There was no way it was going to get to our office to make sure we could count it for a quorum and add their selections to the tally. So a receipt of exactly how they voted as soon as they vote, and they can vote immediately when they receive those invitations to vote, or anytime, even the last day, even up till the last minute, we can accept an electronic ballot, which is great. No miscounted ballots. I don't know how many times I sat there and looked at paper ballots and I was unsure as to what the owner wanted me to do. Maybe they took a line and slashed through everyone. They forgot to sign their ballot. All of these things can happen when we leave it in the hands of the owners at their homes with the paper ballot. But electronically, no more miscounted ballots. We're not going to allow them to miss any step. All of the authentication process is followed, and it will be a valid ballot. So no more miscounted ballots, authenticated results instantly. You know, electronically, we're able to authenticate in multiple different ways. Much higher participation rates. We are seeing, you know, at least 30% of the emails that you send us will vote electronically. And in most elections, that is enough to achieve quorum more reliably. So you are going to begin to achieve quorum, and that is exactly where you want to be at, especially with these elections and electing your board of directors. And of course, I've talked about this. You will have a duly elected board members with a normal rotation of terms. It will be easier for you to track those things, and they can represent the community in any of those situations that we talked about: lawsuits, insurance claims. They'll have the ability to do that.
Great.
I feel like we have a few more questions here.
Yes.
You want me to go on, or should we stop?
Let's get some of these questions done. So the one that was misinterpreted, sorry, Nick, he meant that if there was an owner that had 3 units, for example, in a building, do they have to cast 3 ballots, or can they cast a ballot with 3 votes? Again, dependent on your company that you're using. Most will have the ability that owners with multiple units get merged. So when they go to cast their vote, it shows that they own these 3 properties, and however they select is going to cast for all 3 of those properties. Very, very helpful for your perpetual business owners that own lots of units and lots of properties. Your association may have somebody that owns 10 properties, or a developer still has 20 votes for their 20 undeveloped lots still. They only vote, like I said, the one time, and it counts to all, but you want to confirm that with your voting company. because I'm not sure if all of them handle them that way. Languages, what other languages will the information be in? Well, whatever you provide the e-voting company. If you provide the packet with 2 languages and ask the e-voting company to also put alternate languages on the vote, you can absolutely usually do that. Also keep in mind, a lot of your owners that do speak another language already have the language settings set on their computers to be showing everything in an alternate language. So oftentimes that's already taken care of. Somebody asked me about, was this seminar based towards condos versus HOAs? No, we just cover the condo code because there's a little more in that administrative code in the condos, but those beginning codes, that one that I showed that was a condo code, that language is identical for HOAs. It's only that administration code where the secrecy stuff is additional for condos. So that's why we like to point that out so that that doesn't get missed. If you have questions about that later, you can always ask us. We'll give you those codes fully. And then Cathi, I have a question for you. What procedures are available to answer questions, challenges to voting results, and who is authorized to review, recount, and certify results?
Yeah, great question. Typically, there is a process in your documents that an owner would follow to request to look at let's say the election report or that information. So they're going to follow that process and you're going to follow your safe process. Oftentimes there's a timeline. They have, 14 days or 30 days to respond to providing that information to the owner. So don't forget, don't get excited, just follow your regular process. For us, we have a process that we follow. We do charge for it. We do a secondary audit and we point out any inconsistencies that we might see. And typically we're going to do that with the final report anyway. So you'll already know, but we create what we call a viewing report. So there's a report that you can show the owners electronically. And then of course, any paper ballots, they're not going to know what lots or units submitted those in an election because they are secret. So those are some of the steps that you can follow, but take advantage of the time that you have for your documents to process that information and get that out to the owners or to the owner who requested that information.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. More benefits, of course, because there's a lot of benefits. No door-to-door needed. No rolling over a board for the whole year. This just does not happen anymore. So those are some of the benefits. You're always having an official election, your meeting quorum. We say we're 95% successful at reaching quorum before your meeting, which is a great place to be. Once adopted, e-voting works for any required membership vote or election. We're even doing recall votes, everything. So, think of us for anything or think of an electronic voting for any of those options. And of course, this is a great place to be. Don't you want to be that board member that goes to a meeting and says, gosh, we met quorum. We had, 60% of our community vote electronically, and we saved this much money on our paper mailings this year, and we got more for it. So, board and manager looking like superheroes at their meeting. Every board is always looking to their manager to bring something new and exciting to the table. And this is it. This will always make you look good using electronic voting. Okay, so we have one more slide, which we promised.
And we have one more kind of question comments here. Okay. Regina, thank you for explaining that your association's always done it with paper and their process. If you do have some in your committee or board that's questioning, should this be brought into the future? We say start. Get an estimate, bring it to the board, have them attend a webinar showing how it works, because I agree, if it's not broke, don't fix, kind of thing, but maybe you'll get an even better turnout. Maybe it's something to consider for the future. We often think bringing something new like e-voting to your board is like farming. It's going to take a while for them to get there. So it's like 1 year you have to prepare the soil, you add those nutrients, you put the seeds, let them germinate, you got to water, now 2 years later you finally get a good crop. So we get it. It takes time. So that's all we can say for that, is like, if you got a process that's working, it may be great for now, but why not consider it? All right. Bust those myths, Cathi.
So on to our myth busting, our last slide, which is so much fun. These are the reasons that we hear, and besides you've already meeting for them with your paper ballots. And you might be surprised that your board would be excited to look at a new option. The reason we all say no is because we don't understand exactly what the process is or how it works, and we're afraid, So the thing that we hear the most, of course, is we don't have all the owner email addresses. We can assure you that after your first online voting experience, you are going to have more email addresses, more accurate email addresses than you have ever had. And you're never going to have all of the email addresses. So you still may have to send paper packets to those people that, don't have the ability to vote electronically. Maybe they don't have a device. Lots of fun things we're hearing, clubhouses, voting nights, different things where you can help those owners be part of this new option and, learn a little bit more about technology. And it really does help them become to embrace that technology and trust the system. It's not legal. We talked about all the reasons why it is legal today, where to go to find those resources, and make sure that your e-voting company understands those statutes as well. My documents don't allow it. Gosh, it happens. There are some documents out there that do not permit electronic voting. You're going to consult with your association legal representative to see if you can use the authority in the state statute to amend your documents or maybe create a resolution, or maybe that state statute trumps what it says in your document. So be sure that you're looking at all of those options, and then ask the voting company or any other partner that you're working with, what are you doing with our owner emails? It's okay to ask that question, and you should know. And the answer should be that they are only being used for the purposes of running this vote. That is it. There should not be anything else. I had an experience a few days ago. I signed up for an account through the bank, and I don't know why I started getting all these spam emails and emails here and there and everything. And I knew right away what had happened. They had shared my email with another provider. And it takes a lot of time. I call it Saturday unsubscribe. I sit down and unsubscribe to everything that I don't want to have coming into my inbox. So ask them what they're doing with your email addresses. And then what if the results are challenged?
Sorry, before you go on, Kathy, we have a question of, do the emails become accessible records?
Accessible records?
Yes. So basically they're accessible records to the association, being that it's provided to the management with your final report. So management has it with that who voted list. The emails will be on there. As far as does that get provided if somebody is challenging it? Kathy will discuss that right now.
Yes, yeah. And so that's why it would be great to talk with your legal representative. What information do we have to provide to this owner who is challenging the vote or wants to see that owner information? In our opinion, all of that confidential and sensitive information could be removed from those reports, and they could just see that each lot or unit voted. But, this is a conversation. That's why I said take the time that you are provided in your documents and make sure that you're making the most of that report and giving that owner everything that you can provide to them. So in most cases, no, emails are not accessible. The next one, do we have any more questions, Ruth?
Well, we have one for after this learn new software. I've got another myth we're going to bust.
All right. So what if the results are challenged? I think we beat that to death, but gosh, don't get yourself in that position. What are you going to do if you're self-managing your election or your amendment vote? You don't want to be in that position. We have to learn new software. Most, if you're using a self-service or a management company add-on, yes, you are going to have to learn something new. It's unfortunate and it is confusing to know that there is a whole huge process out there with electronic voting that you're going to have to embrace. In most cases, a full service provider is going to protect you from all of those things. They're going to take all the responsibility of the vote and run it, manage it, even continue to be your partner after the vote for any of these challenges or questions. So just a lot of things to consider, of course, with the myth busting. Here we go. They're all busted. Any other myth busting questions out there?
Yes. So this is we're going to add this in on our next time we have to do this presentation. And the last bullet's going to say, my owners in a 55 plus community can't do it. It's too hard. And I'm going to bust that myth right now. As I said, I'm in Arizona.
Ruth.
I'm in Arizona, and The 55 plus, that's me, that's Cathi, that's a lot of us here. We're on
Almost,
computers every day. Yeah, Jeff, same thing. We all use computers every day. We're on our phones constantly.
We
That's
started it. We
actually
started this whole craze. I mean, that's our,
exactly
20 years ago, we're the ones who got this going.
right. I did emails in 1990. I was part of a study at the University of Illinois with email communication. Like that was me. I was part of that group. It was great. But 55 plus that category, that demographic, actually they are the best respondents. The older they get, they
They're
actually are
traveling.
the higher respondents. 75 plus is one of our target kind of categories because they, most of them are retired. They have the time. They look at their emails, if not daily, at least once a week. They read everything. They don't just take their phone and swipe left.
Right.
They actually read their email. They click the link. As long as the instructions are simple enough, they read those instructions, they follow them, they read the candidate bios, and they vote. We have a community here started many years ago, 2017, 2018, something like that. The 6,000 homes developing community. They call themselves a 75 plus. They're gated, driving around in their golf carts, everything like that. They're a blast. I love that. Their first year e-voting, 46% voted online.
Wow.
Average age of 75. So
No, that's fantastic.
yeah, and it just gets better every year. And they did the same kind of thing. They had some voting events. They have a computer club that helped those without technology, that kind of stuff. But if you consider that group, they are booking airfares. They're going back from Florida to their summer homes
They
because it's
travel.
right
Yeah,
now in
they're
Florida.
traveling more than the ones who are going to
Exactly.
work every day.
They do it all online, so don't worry about that demographic. They are in it to win it.
That is a funny comment too. If you know how to use an iPhone and get one and go on Facebook, you can learn how to e-vote. I love it.
It's exactly it. It's that they have email, they can do it.
And all joking aside, I had a couple of people who know me and the participants here, they just texted me and says, Jeff, speak up. You ran Winmore 55 and over community. And yeah, I can attest to everything Ruth and Cathy's said. They vote, they turn out, they get involved. They're traveling, and if they're not afraid to ask questions. If they're not sure how to do something, they're going to ask the manager. They're not going to wing it or risk screwing something up that is so important to them. So I resemble Ruth's remarks and stand by everything that they just said.
So for all those that
Okay.
are asking,
Slide here. If you do have
Yeah.
questions, things come up, you want to get an estimate, you want to talk to us a little more, after you're able to digest all the information, you'll receive a copy of the presentation, like Jeff said, but here is our email. It goes to everyone on the sales team. So any one of us will be able to answer your question and take care of you right away. So please, use that if you need to.
And
for those wondering
before-
about, we do have a webinar that shows our process. So ask for that and we'll invite you to that as well.
in fact, before you head out and give your parting words and how to contact you and everything, I just want to mention everybody, if you don't yet see the chat area on your Zoom interface, hit the little chat button at the bottom and a new area will appear. That is where I'm going to again place the link for the evaluation. And filling out the brief evaluation is also going to get you everything that Ruth and Cathi just mentioned, the links on how to do everything that they offer, as well as their contact information. And I will go over that after Cathi and Ruth head out. I will remain on to go over the evaluation process and how you can get the slides, how you can view the recording of this video in a couple of days. I'll go over all of that after their parting words of this wonderful and informative presentation.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Well, our parting words are thank you so much for attending the webinar today. We hope that we shared a lot of valuable information with you and gave you some options to consider and a better understanding of what's available out there in the industry. And if there are any further questions, please, just that info at vote-HOA-Now.com, like I said, gets to all the sales team and we can answer your questions right away.